Hello everyone. In this video we will be introducing Autonomous, and we will just be talking about how to write basic code for Auton. The Autonomous period is the first 15 seconds within the match. Within this period, the robot is to score by itself only using code. There is no driver control or human intervention whatsoever. Having a good and consistent Autonomous has been important and is especially important for this season changeup. There are two big reasons as to why having a good Autonomous is so important. First, it sets the tone of the match. It's a lot easier to start off with the lead than having to fight a score deficit and then having to come back from that. In other words, you're fighting an uphill battle if you lose Autonomous. On the other hand, if you win Autonomous, you're already put into a favorable position. All you need to do is just maintain that through defense. Second, the score bonus is massive this year. It's 6 points, and if you're able to complete your home row, you get an entire win point. This win point is something that will directly affect your ranking in the tournament. How long does it take to code an Autonomous? I would say the most basic timeline is that you should at least give yourselves upwards of 2 weeks. The reason for this is that you want to make sure that time is not the limiting factor when coding an Autonomous. You want all the time possible, as getting that consistent Autonomous is really important. However, if you're going for a more complex Auton, like if you are trying to score the entire home row by yourself, give yourselves upward of a month. That is something very, very complicated and will take a lot of time to code and perfect. So let's real quickly review the common sensors. First, over here we have the IMEs. It stands for Integrated Motor Encoder. What it does is measure rotation without bound. They are very frequently used for the chassis. Next, over here we have the potentiometer. So this measures up to 270 degrees, and going past that will break the sensor. The way you probe for the range is that you would insert a shaft into the sensor and just kind of twist around. You will feel a physical resistance when you get close to the breaking point. The reason that this is used for lifts is because the value of the potentiometer is not lost when it is unplugged. So what this means specifically for the lift is that all of the positions of the lift, or these values of the lift, they remain constant no matter where the lift is started. On the other hand, if you use an encoder for the lift, the encoder zero position or the lift zero position will be at where the sensor or where the encoder first gets its power. However, this is not the case for this sensor. Next, over here we have the IMU/inertial sensor / the gyro. So they are gravity-based sensors that are used exclusively during Autonomous to get the orientation of the robot. The reason it is used exclusively during Autonomous is because after the first 15 seconds, generally the sensor becomes a little bit more unreliable. What this means is that as time progresses, whatever the value of the sensor, it may or may not really resemble the current, I guess you could say, orientation of the robot. The values, in other words, are inaccurate. So now let's move on to the common types of Autonomous code. The most basic type of Auton is a timed Auton. Newer teams generally opt for this type of Auton, but the issue with this is that consistency is not really the best. Unlike a custom controller, timed Autonomous cannot account for external physical factors that may throw off your robot. The logic behind a timed Autonomous is that you will spin the motors, you'll wait until a certain time's passed, then you will brake the motors. Elaborating on the logic for timed Autonomous, so first you are going to spin the motor at a speed that you choose. Generally speaking, lower speeds are a little bit more predictable and consistent than higher speeds. Then you will wait for a set amount of time. You will be tuning this number based on how far you want your robot to move. Third, you're just going to stop the motors after the time elapses. This 3-step process is something that you will continue to repeat until you just get a working Auton. So here is example code for a time-based auton. In lines 4 and 5, we are declaring the right and left drive motors. We also see that the left motor is reversed. Okay. And then in line 10 and 11, we are spinning both of the motors at 50% velocity for a total of half a second. Then after the half second passes, we are stopping both of the motors. So the stop function actually has 3 different brake types. The default one is brake type coast, but there are 2 other ones. There's brake type hold and brake type brake. So what brake type brake and brake type hold have in common is that it actually applies an active brake to the motors. However, I would just personally recommend brake type coast, which is the default one, so you can just leave it blank. The reason for this is that brake type hold and brake type brake generally produce jerky motion. In other words, the active brake produces a really abrupt stop. So that's all for this video. The stuff in this box is what was covered in this video. The only things that were not covered were encoder-based autons and custom controllers. They will be discussed in another video called Application of Sensors into Autonomous.